Imagine coming home from work only to discover that your husband, out of jealousy, had set your brand new car on fire. This is the story of a couple trapped in a deeply toxic marriage. It all began one morning when Bayodun's mother brought a girl from the village and presented her as his future wife. "Mother, how do you expect me to marry a village girl you picked yourself? Did you even see the way she chews her food like a goat?" Bayodun scoffed. "I'm too refined to be seen with such a woman, let alone marry her." His mother stared at him coldly before responding. "That young woman you're mocking is humble and intelligent. She may not have had the same opportunities as you, but that doesn't make her less worthy. You better start accepting her, because soon, she'll be your wife." She was determined to see him marry Eniola, a respectful and modest young woman who, to her, embodied everything a good wife should be. Bayodun, completely consumed by his career, never made time for relationships. Over the years, his mother had waited patiently, hoping he would bring someone home. But he was always too busy to even consider settling down. Growing tired of waiting, she traveled to their village and chose Eniola herself. To her, the girl was obedient, respectful, and had the qualities of a dependable wife and mother. But Bayodun saw things differently. Eniola wasn't the kind of woman he had imagined for himself. She was too simple, too unpolished. As weeks passed, his resistance didn't waver. Though Eniola remained polite and quiet, he saw those traits as weakness. How could someone like me, successful and educated, end up with a girl from the village? He thought often. When his friends learned of the engagement, their mockery only deepened his disdain. He started avoiding Eniola entirely, skipping out on the arrangements his mother made for them to spend time together. Despite the coldness, Eniola remained calm. She had been raised to respect her elders and trusted Mama's words that Bayodun was a good man. She believed that, with time, he would grow to see her heart. She made every effort to learn the ways of the city, adjusting slowly to a world very different from where she grew up. Her admiration for Bayodun grew, even though he never showed the slightest affection in return. One evening, after another tense discussion about their upcoming wedding, Bayodun snapped. "I can't do this, Mama. She's not on my level. What will people think when they see me with her?" Fed up, his mother finally lost her composure. "You've always looked down on others, judging them by status. But Eniola has strength and kindness you refuse to acknowledge. She may not come from wealth, but she's the kind of woman who can bring balance to your arrogance." Reluctantly, Bayodun gave in to his mother's wishes and married Eniola. He knew he would never hear the end of it otherwise. But he did it without love, only to silence her. In his eyes, she was a poor village girl, far beneath him, and their union was nothing more than a duty, a means to give his mother the grandchildren she craved. Eniola sensed the distance in him. Mama had warned her that Bayodun was focused on his work and advised her not to worry, assuring her that love would come with time. Holding on to that hope, Eniola poured herself into the marriage, trying everything to win his heart. But nothing worked. They shared a house and a bed, but there was no affection, only silence and coldness. To Bayodun, their marriage was a box to tick, a social obligation. Eniola, however, kept believing in the possibility of change. She made his favorite meals, maintained the home, and cared for him, always hoping he'd notice her efforts. Still, he remained emotionally distant. Late nights at work became the norm. When he did return home, it was only to sleep. Intimacy was rare and purely functional, intended for producing children. There was no connection, no warmth. Even after she bore him 2 beautiful children, his resentment only grew. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had been coerced into something he never wanted. To him, Eniola was nothing more than a reminder of his mother's control and the life he didn't choose. He never appreciated the quiet sacrifices she made. Instead, he criticized her constantly. "You'll never fit into my world," he told her. "You don't belong here." Though his words cut deep, Eniola held her tongue. She knew speaking up would only provoke him further. In the midst of a loveless marriage, she found comfort in her children. They became her source of strength, her reason to keep going. She hoped with time, Bayodun might see all she had done, all she had given. But in his eyes, she remained the same village girl his mother forced into his life. Then one day, after years of enduring emotional neglect, Eniola approached him with a quiet yet firm request. "I want to work," she said gently, looking up at him with cautious hope. Instead of showing support, Bio-dun burst into laughter, mocking her with disbelief. Work? What can you possibly do? Bio-dun scoffed with a sneer. You're just a village girl with village education. His mockery was sharp, intended to wound. But Eniola stood firm. Though her education came from modest village schools, she believed in her abilities and was determined to prove herself. Without waiting for his approval, she began job hunting across the city. Rejections came often and harshly, but she refused to give up. Her resolve only grew stronger with each closed door. After weeks of tireless effort, she finally landed a position at a small firm. The salary was modest, but to her, it was a fresh beginning. When Bio-dun heard about it, he couldn't contain his laughter. The amount she would earn was a fraction of his income, and he made sure to remind her of that at every turn. He dismissed her efforts with ridicule. You're better off looking after the house and the kids. That's all you're good at, he'd say with disdain. But Eniola didn't let his scorn hold her back. She threw herself into her new job with determination, eager to grow, to learn, and to succeed. The first few weeks were challenging. The work was unfamiliar and fast-paced, but Eniola pushed through. Slowly, she adjusted. Her dedication began to show. Her colleagues noticed, and even her boss started to recognize her potential. Within 5 months, she was promoted to a managerial role, a position few ever reached that quickly. With the promotion came a significant raise. For the first time, she could contribute meaningfully to their household. But instead of being proud, Bio-dun grew more hostile. He couldn't stand seeing the woman he once mocked begin to shine. The success he never expected from her began to eat at him. His pride wouldn't let him accept the fact that Eniola now earned more than he did. Jealousy turned into anger. He began accusing her of sleeping with her boss, convinced that was the only explanation for her sudden rise. Eniola tried to explain, to show him that her growth was the result of hard work and consistency, but he refused to believe her. What Bio-dun failed to understand was that Eniola's journey had been fueled by silent preparation. One morning, her boss stormed into the office, furious. Important documents he had entrusted to a colleague were filled with errors. It would take hours to fix, and the office was on edge. Everyone avoided eye contact, afraid of being called out. But Eniola, seeing the panic, quietly walked over and offered to help. Her colleague hesitated, unsure, but eventually handed over the files. Without hesitation, Eniola returned to her desk, powered on her computer, and got to work. Her colleagues watched in surprise, unsure of what she was doing. Within 2 hours, she approached her boss and handed over the corrected documents. He stared in disbelief. What usually took 12 hours to fix manually, she had completed in just 2. How did you do this? He asked, stunned. The room went silent. Softly, Eniola explained that a man who once visited her village had taught her basic computer skills. He noticed her natural ability with numbers and told her those skills could be life-changing. Eniola, always eager to learn, had taken his words seriously and practiced until she mastered them. That moment, born from quiet effort and unseen discipline, changed everything for her. T was that very skill which allowed Eniola to complete the task swiftly, earning not just her boss's appreciation but also his trust. He didn't waste time assigning her more responsibilities. Soon, she was placed in charge of balancing the firm's records and began working directly with her boss, a well-groomed, confident man who many found attractive. Bio-dun's jealousy deepened with every passing day. He couldn't believe her sudden rise was the result of hard work. In his mind, there had to be another reason. There's no way you're getting promoted just like that, he snapped one evening, eyes burning with suspicion. You must be sleeping with him. The accusation stunned Eniola. She had worked tirelessly to earn everything on her own merit. But instead of listening, Bio-dun grew more obsessed with the idea that she was being unfaithful. He began showing up at her workplace unannounced, keeping tabs on her movements, and even trailing her after office hours. His behavior became increasingly unstable. Whatever was left of their fragile marriage was now on the verge of collapse. One afternoon, instead of attending an important meeting, Bio-dun drove to her office and parked across the street, waiting. Hours passed as he remained fixated on the entrance, determined to catch her in an act that only existed in his imagination. Just as his phone rang, his boss calling, he saw Eniola step out of the building, laughing beside her boss. The man opened the car door for her with a smile. Something snapped inside Bio Dun. Ignoring the incoming call, he gripped the steering wheel, his thoughts racing. Seeing them together filled him with a rage he couldn't contain. He followed them, convinced he was about to uncover the betrayal he had built up in his mind. Every laugh Eniola shared felt like a cruel joke at his expense. When they pulled into a car dealership, he parked a distance away and watched as they stepped into the showroom, pointing at various cars with interest. As they discussed with a salesman and examined a sleek new vehicle, Biodun's anger spiraled. To him, it was obvious. Her boss was buying her a car. He couldn't see any other explanation. Fueled by anger and humiliation, he drove away from the dealership, his thoughts clouded with resentment. "She's mocking me," he muttered through clenched teeth. "They both are." Still burning with jealousy, he returned to the office, only to find his own boss waiting, furious. "Where have you been?" his boss barked. "You missed a critical investor meeting. One you were supposed to lead. We've lost them because of your absence." Bio Dun fumbled for words, trying to explain, but his excuses meant nothing. "This isn't the first time you've been careless," his boss continued. "We can't afford to keep someone who doesn't take their responsibilities seriously. You're dismissed. Effective immediately." The word struck him like a blow. Fired? Everything he had built, his career, his pride, crumbled in that moment. In disbelief, he gathered his things and left the building in silence. When he got home later that day, his fury had reached its peak. As he approached the house, his eyes locked on something that made his heart pound harder. A brand new car sat parked in front of the house. The same one he had seen earlier at the dealership. Overcome with rage, he stormed over, doused the car in fuel, and set it ablaze. The flames erupted instantly, licking the sky as neighbors ran out in panic, trying to contain the fire. Just then, Eniola returned home, and froze. Her breath caught as she stared at the burning vehicle. Her voice cracked as she shouted, "What have you done, Bio Dun? That car. It was your birthday gift." He turned toward her, his face twisted with confusion. "Birthday gift? Are you joking?" "Yes," she cried. "I bought it for you." He shook his head, scoffing. "You think I'm that naive? I saw you both at the dealership. Laughing. Picking out the car. Don't lie to me, Eniola. I'm not a fool. You've been cheating on me." Eniola's face drained of color. The depth of Biodun's accusation shook her. She stood speechless, unable to comprehend how the man she had sacrificed so much for, the father of her children, could believe such a thing. "Bio Dun," she said, her voice trembling, "I have never betrayed you. I bought that car to show love and appreciation. Despite everything you've put me through. How could you even think otherwise?" She handed him the car documents. His name was boldly printed across them. Biodun's anger began to fade as reality hit him. The gift, a generous heartfelt gesture, had been destroyed by his own hands. The fire still raged outside, but inside him, something went still. Guilt crept in, slowly suffocating his pride. Eniola wiped her tears, her voice breaking as she continued. "I worked hard, hoping one day you'd see me. Really see me. I wanted us to feel like a real family. But all you ever did was talk down to me, accuse me, belittle every effort I made. I thought this gift would make you proud. I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd finally acknowledge me. But now you've shown me who you truly are." Around them, neighbors had gathered. Some murmured in disbelief, others watched in silence. A few shook their heads, disappointed. Bio Dun slowly sank to his knees beside the smoldering wreck, broken, realizing what he had done. He had lost his job. And now, he had destroyed a symbol of his wife's love. The very woman who had stood by him, despite everything. "I'm sorry, Eniola," he whispered, eyes filled with tears. "I thought you and your boss. I didn't know. I let my jealousy blind me." She stood quietly, not responding right away. Years of pain weighed on her chest. Before her was a man beginning to grasp just how deeply he had failed. But was it too late? The flames were finally extinguished. Smoke hung in the air like a scar. Eniola turned to him, eyes still glistening. "For years I waited. I hoped you'd see me as more than just a village girl. But I'm tired, Bio Dun. Tired of proving myself to someone who refuses to see my worth." And then she walked past him, steady but heavy-hearted. Bio Dun watched her leave, helpless, as the last piece of his world drifted out of reach. The burnt shell of the car behind him was a reminder of everything his pride had cost. That night, he sat alone in silence, surrounded by ashes and regret. When he eventually went inside, he saw Eniola had locked herself in her room. She didn't want to speak to him. The bitterness was deep. He stood outside her door, aching. Hours passed as he pleaded softly, begging for forgiveness. But Eniola said nothing. Inside, she sat still, torn, unsure what to do next. Days turned into weeks. Eniola remained distant. Her silence, colder than any words, consumed the house. Every attempt Bio Dun made to reconnect was met with indifference or quiet rejection. It was unbearable. The silence pierced deeper than the loss of his job. Bio Dun couldn't sleep. He spent his nights haunted by every cruel word, every opportunity he wasted to uplift the woman who had given him everything. Now he saw her clearly. Eniola wasn't just a simple girl from a village. She was the one who gave his life meaning, his balance, his strength. But now, it felt like she had nothing left to give him. In desperation, he turned to the only person he could, his mother. He begged her to speak with Eniola, to plead on his behalf. His mother visited. She sat with Eniola, voice soft. "My daughter, I know my son has wronged you. You have every right to feel hurt. But please, find it in your heart to give him another chance." Eniola listened respectfully, but her heart remained guarded. The years of pain hadn't vanished. She had no energy left for hasty forgiveness. Words, no matter how heartfelt, couldn't erase what she had endured. Though she appreciated the gesture, she was not ready to return to the arms of the man who once made her feel invisible. Bio Dun, crushed by her continued silence, began to unravel. The weight of it all, the job he lost, the woman he had pushed away, sent him into darkness. He couldn't picture life without her. The love he now felt had become overwhelming. But it came too late. Each day, the walls of the house felt tighter. Guilt suffocated him. Loneliness consumed him. One evening, unable to bear the pain any longer, he made a decision. The thought of continuing life in this emptiness was too much. He sat at the table and wrote a letter, addressed to Eniola and the children. It was filled with apologies, regrets, and the confession that he no longer had the strength to go on. He locked himself in the bathroom, preparing to end everything. But just as he was about to follow through, the door burst open. Eniola stood there, pale, breathless, eyes wide with horror. She had sensed something was terribly wrong and hurried inside, panic surging through her chest. "Bio Dun!" she cried, her voice trembling. "What are you doing?" Startled, Bio Dun looked up, his eyes heavy with tears. "I can't keep living like this, Eniola," he whispered. "Everything's gone. My job, my pride, and most of all you. I never deserved you. I just needed to say I'm sorry before I go." Eniola's heart shattered at the sight of him, broken and vulnerable. The anger she had once held began to fade as she took in the man who had fallen so far from the prideful person he used to be. "No, Bio Dun," she cried out, rushing to him and pulling him into her arms. "You can't do this. Don't leave me like this." Her voice trembled as she held him tightly. "Yes, you've hurt me, and yes, I've been angry. But ending your life isn't the answer. We can work through this if you're willing." Bio Dun clung to her, his entire body shaking. "I'm sorry, Eniola. I was so blinded by jealousy and pride. I couldn't see the amazing woman in front of me. I didn't see your worth." Eniola pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "You haven't lost me, not completely. But things can't go back to the way they were. I need time, to heal, to breathe. If we're going to make this work, it has to be different this time." They remained there for a while, letting the silence speak where words fell short. In that moment, the anger had dissolved, replaced by something tender and uncertain, but real. In the following days, Bio Dun made every effort to show her he had changed. He was present, attentive, and full of humility. With each passing day, his love for Eniola grew stronger. Then, one morning, Bio Dun woke to a surprising message from his former boss. The investor who had withdrawn from the project was suddenly reconsidering and wanted to meet. Confused but hopeful, Bio Dun dressed quickly and went to the office, uncertain of what to expect. His boss explained, one of the investors had a change of heart. He's willing to discuss the project again, but be careful, Bio Dunn. This is your final chance. Eager to make things right, Bio Dunn accepted. When he asked about the investor's identity, his boss kept it vague and simply gave him the meeting details. That evening, Bio Dunn shared the news with Eniola. I don't know how or why, but they want to meet with me again, he said cautiously. Eniola listened and then asked, do you know who the investor is? He shook his head. No. Why? She hesitated for a moment before speaking. I think I might know. My boss has a brother who works closely with major investors. We spoke recently about your situation. I didn't realize at the time, but when he mentioned the details, I understood he was referring to your project. Bio Dunn stared at her in disbelief. You told him about me? She nodded. Yes. I shared what had happened. How hard things had been for you, and how much this meant. He must have spoken to his brother. Speechless, Bio Dunn felt a wave of emotion wash over him. The very woman he had doubted and accused had become the one fighting for his redemption. I don't even know what to say, he murmured. I don't deserve any of this. I don't deserve you. Eniola gave a small, careful smile. You've made mistakes, Bio Dunn. But you're trying. That's all I've ever really wanted. The next week, Bio Dunn met with the investors, including the man Eniola had spoken to. The meeting went better than he expected. By the end of it, they agreed to restart the project. Relief flooded through him, and he knew it wouldn't have been possible without her. Returning home, he embraced Eniola without a word. His gratitude spoke volumes. Thank you, he whispered. You saved my future. I'm sorry for everything. For doubting you. For all the things I let pride ruin. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Eniola, though still guarded, allowed herself to rest in his arms. She had endured so much, but perhaps now, they were ready to heal. Maybe there was still a future worth building. From that day on, Bio Dunn did everything he could to show her she mattered. No longer blinded by her past or where she came from, he saw the strength, wisdom, and compassion she had always carried. Through steady effort and patience, their love slowly began to mend. The lessons Bio Dunn had learned stayed with him, and Eniola, though cautious, began to believe they might truly find happiness together. The story teaches us never to look down on others because of their circumstances. Every person has value, and pride often blinds us to what matters most. True humility reveals the beauty in those around us. Marriage is sacred. Enter it with genuine love, not for appearances or convenience. And when mistakes are made, choose forgiveness, because we are all flawed, and only through grace can relationships truly survive. I hope the story touched your heart.